how does the human mind deal with decision fatigue? I'll throw it out there. How do we instinctively deal with it?
Well, no one, it's funny. No one's ever asked me that question in that way. And like, I'm going to, for you, you have to answer too. I'll go first since I'm the guest, but my sense is that there's different sorts of reactions based on who somebody is and what the environment is. I think in some cases, they just shut down, in the sense of they don't want to deal with it anymore. You know, I made reference to this "Cow Gone Take Me Away." I think for many listeners, they have no idea what I'm talking about. Um, it's a super old commercial about, you know, sort of bath suds where, you know, someone needs to relax in a bubble bath because their house is so overwhelming with screaming kids. I think that's one reaction. I think another reaction, is more front foot, be aggressive. Like, you know, it's overwhelming. That could trigger anger, and you sort of have the, another old, movie illusion, network. I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. And as I think about it, I'm sort of pointing to either a fight or a flight response. And it's not a question of what's valid or right. But I think when you threaten us the way that, and there's no you, when we're so overwhelmed with all of this information and choice, we're generally less well functioning, and we can react in different ways. What do you think?
No, fair enough. And it was a bit leading, but I go back to sort of the African Veld, right? And in a situation of ambiguity, so imagine you're on the plane and one or two or three people jump out of the bush. They're running at top speed in a certain direction, right? Like, you don't have the context for the situation, but the default option is to run in the same direction, right? And I kind of see, if you're bombarded with choice and there is sufficient ambiguity, like there is in most decisions,
Mm-hmm.
then you typically fall back on a default option. And what is a default option? It's the option that those around you have chosen, your peer group have chosen, your tribe, those you identify as your tribe have chosen. And I just wonder the extent to which as we continue to, in every domain of our lives, we get continue to be bombarded with information overload.
Mm-hmm.
Are we just going to continue to migrate more and more toward default options, where default options are either in a more Orwellian future driven by algorithms that
Mm-hmm.
know us better than we know ourselves, or in a slightly less dystopic future, I think, driven by just an increase in tribalism, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
and I think through time, the latter option has dominated, right? Think about even back 15 or 20 years ago, it might be a little longer, but what did we have? We had, maybe your hometown newspaper, you had a dozen, maybe way fewer than that, sort of national sources of news. You had 4 or 5 dominant TV news sources. And so you could kind of pick, I read the New York Times, or I read the Wall Street Journal, or I read whatever. And,
Mm-hmm.
and my opinions and the way I think about the world are largely triangulated from the small number of news sources that I read. Why do I read those news sources? Because they are the news sources that my tribe reads, right, or listens to. And so you get sort of default options that are informed by this small. Now, I don't know whether or not the echo chamber of social media you'd think that it would cause an increase in fragmentation, because you've got all these, anyone can be on a pulpit
Right.
and expositing their views. But in fact, what's happened is people have become much more, I think the number of tribes has actually decreased over time. And now we've got sort of, really, it becomes bilateral. You've got either
Right.
this side or that side. And certainly we see that in politics. And I wonder if we won't observe the same phenomenon on a wider variety of different dimensions of human interaction.
Yeah. I'd want more data to speculate on sort of the tiers of tribalism, because I think it's easy to look at the highest level and just say, well, there's two sides and there's right versus left, and depending on your perspective, good versus evil. Again, it's a genetic thing. I mean, we are tribal. It's just sort of who we are. We don't like or prefer to be in groups. We have an undeniable need to belong, because that was our original source of safety. So small t tribalism is actually a very good thing, and it's something I wrote about in Geometry of Wealth and working on other projects. Probably the deepest source of meaning in our life is our connection to others. The sense that we belong, that we get safety, we get meaning, we get help in lots of different ways from those around us. This proliferation of what's the word, media or news. I mean, now everybody on Facebook is their own TV station. They can kind of create their own news feed, and you find others, or they find you. It seems like there is sort of a proliferation of different voices who have come to sort of cluster on different issues to like-minded folks. So it's almost like a parliamentary system of government where, depending on what the issue is, the coalitions will shift. I mean, look, this is what sociologists and others do for a living. I think it's too new, too in the flow for us to really say. But the most important point for me of what we've been talking about for the last few minutes is that we come to the table with a set of beliefs. They are what they are, and we look for others who validate them. And that has never been more
readily available.
Readily available. It's just out there. And that anybody, all this fake news stuff is such bullshit. Fake news is simply news that doesn't validate your point of view. Doesn't mean that it's wrong, but like it doesn't help you psychologically, so you want to sort of criticize it. But anyway.